Hey, what's up, Raider Nation? Welcome back. Another edition of the Raiders NFL Draft Podcast. I am Rhett Lewis, alongside our former NFL scout, former Raider, Bucky Brooks. And we have a lot going on as we get down the path of the draft right now. The Combine is coming up next week from Indianapolis. We're all going to be there. I'm out in L.A. continuing to prepare for that. Bucky is down in the other L.A., Louisiana, New Orleans, Louisiana, prepping for the HBCU Legacy Bowl. They've got practices going all week. Bucky down in my hometown. I'm jealous, my friend. Let us know what's going on down in New Orleans for the Legacy Bowl and what some of those players are looking like out there.
So this is a great event, Rhett. This is where the top players from historically Black colleges and universities show up and they participate in a combine. They then play in an all-star game that gives them an opportunity to play in front of representatives of all 32 teams. And so for some of these small school standouts, it's really a chance for them to show their talents on a bigger stage. And look, it's been terrific to see these guys take advantage of the opportunities. We can talk about Elijah Williams, MEAC Player of the Year from Morgan State. He's been absolutely dominant. And then a guy from your neck of the woods, that you're familiar with, Miles Crawley, quarterback from Grambling, has been spectacular throwing passes. Quarterback Eric Phoenix from South Carolina State. So it's been a great week to watch some of these guys really do it in front of NFL guys for the first time.
I love that for Miles Crawley. He was a favorite of mine the last couple of years, as he has been one of the college quarterbacks that was invited to the Manning Passing Academy as a staffer, coaches a group of kids, and then gets an opportunity to showcase his skills amidst a group of really talented QBs, and he totally looked the part there to me. So excited to hear that he's doing well, and look forward to seeing him and what you guys do on the game call on NFL Network this weekend. So we'll get to, that'll put a bow on All-Star Game season officially, and then we will, of course, push forward to the Combine, an event you and I both love because it gives us an opportunity to connect, gives us an opportunity to gather some intel, get a little buzz out there on some of these prospects that we're hearing some of their names, and then, get an opportunity to see some guys out there on the field that we haven't really seen since the end of the regular season, albeit not in helmets and shoulder pads, but still in some football-like drills. Obviously, 40-yard dash certainly brings the entertainment value and all that. And maybe we get somebody that tries to challenge Xavier Worthy's 4.21 40-yard dash, the world combine record, if you will. And so there's a lot of fun moments throughout the combine. Where do you feel like you get teams get, and a team like the Raiders could get the most value from the week in Indianapolis?
It's a combination, Rhett. It's a combination of a few different things. Old school evaluators will tell you that the combine is really all about the medical, the background information that you get from interviews, and a little bit about the workouts. But really, it's about the first two things, making sure that these guys clear the medical situation, which they won't really find out until later. And then the interviews. Right. It's the first time that a lot of these executives and coaches will have an opportunity to sit down one-on-one with some of the top prospects around the country. When you are an area scout doing the school call, you may pop into a designated school, but you may have an opportunity to sit down for the prospect. And some of these guys haven't gone to all-star games. So scouts have not had a chance to talk to them one-on-one. At the combine, you submit your names. You have 60 guys that you can roll through, and they can meet the general manager, head coach, some of the position coaches and scouts, and really begin to build that connection that is essential to making the team comfortable and making the selection when we get to draft weekend.
Yeah, and I think there's so much that comes out. Look, there are items throughout the week that will, turn some heads, right, and generate some headlines. And that can be from coaches and general managers getting up to the podium, talking about players on there. It's not all related to these draft prospects, right? Because the team personnel that gets up in front of these podiums and engages in these media sessions, they'll be talking about free agents. They'll be talking about guys on their team that they may want to re-sign, guys they're not re-signing, although we don't necessarily hear a whole lot about that. But sometimes they'll say, well, yeah, he's on the roster right now. And then that becomes a headline. And so there are these moments that we'll be talking about. There is a media element to it, and the prospects have a chance to address the media. And better believe that that's getting evaluated too, right? Like how they interact with that group, the things that they say there. And then you
Mhm.
talked about the medical for sure. The measurements is something that we talk about a lot. I mean, I remember when Kyler Murray went to the combine and everybody, was waiting with bated breath to see what that measurement was going to be on his height. I don't think anybody really cares anymore what that measurement was, which will tell you something, about all that. I wanted so badly for your UNC Tar Heel, Willie Lampkin, to get the combine
Mhm.
invite so he could stand up there proudly
Yeah.
on that measuring tape and say, "Yes, sir, I am 5'10" and an offensive guard, and I'm gonna smash the dude in front of me. I'm gonna smash his face in because that's the type of player I am." So like there are some of those moments too, but then we talk about the interview moments, right? A lot. And we get a lot of, reporting on what goes on in those interviews. You got to pick and choose what you're going to believe and the sources in which all that stuff comes from. One of those moments I remember, quite vividly, new Raiders head coach Pete Carroll had
Mhm.
one with DK Metcalf, who was making the circuit of
Yes.
interviews with his shirt off, right? And so he gets into the Seahawks meeting room and
Unbelievable.
Pete's like, "You know what? You're not wearing a shirt. I'm not wearing a shirt." He takes his shirt off. I don't you think I don't know if we get one of those moments this year, but I think that kind of stuff is always interesting to see as well.
It is interesting because you're trying to see if the personalities mesh the culture. And for Pete Carroll, who has always been about the culture and the energy of the environment, those one-on-ones matter because you want to bring the right kind of guys in, the guys that show that competitive stamina and those things. But also, Coach Carroll has been one that has found a way to mesh a bunch of different personalities and build a cohesive team. One of the strengths that he possesses is his ability to work with so many different personality types and kind of get them to be the best versions of themselves within the confines of the team. For a person like that, the combine matters because he's always assessing how they fit in within the fabric of the squad. This is important. It would be important to him. Sure, he'll assess all the stuff that they do in between the lines, the running, the jumping, the skills, but a lot of it is making sure that you bring the right guys into the thing. As coaches talk about, get the right guys on the bus, get the wrong guys off the bus, and you figure out what to do once you get the right team together.
Yeah, and that's a good way to put that. And that is so important in building culture and establishing a new culture, right? With this new structure of leadership in Las Vegas. So I think that's really important with the type of guys that you're going to be targeting in this year's draft because you got to have a chance to really build that foundation or at least that part of it right from the ground up with a draft class, and this being the first draft class for John Spytek and Pete Carroll. Okay, so when it comes to the combine, on-field drills, right? I think we love the 40-yard dash.
Mm-hmm.
We love watching fast guys run, right? I mean, it's just that there is an entertainment value in it, and you love seeing guys that are able to get out there and be the fastest receiver, or the fastest, an edge rusher that
Mm-hmm.
gets out there and runs a 4.3, and everybody's like, "Whoa, this dude's 200 and 55, 60 pounds, and he's putting up these crazy athletic numbers." Where do you find that? Let's start with the 40-yard dash there. Is there a position group that you feel like the 40 really matters for? Like, is it maybe more so than others?
I think two positions that really stand out, um,
Yeah.
and they're kind of obvious positions, right? So I would say wide receiver and defensive back. Uh, for defensive backs, it matters more because you're trying to track recovery speed. You're trying to figure out if they're fast enough to deal with the fastest athletes on the other side that you have to deal with. And we'll be honest, some of the best athletes that you'll find are playing wide receiver right now. That's why you want to see how fast guys can truly run. But for defensive backs, it is really important. They're the only position that starts out going backwards before they go forwards. They have decathletes that are playing over there, and so it's not only how fast they run, but it's the explosiveness, how high they jump in the vertical, how far they jump out on the broad. Do those jumps match the explosiveness that's displayed when you're running in a straight line? Those things matter. But yeah, the 40-yard dash is important because you need to see these guys run fast because it also helps you put together the guys that could potentially help you in the special teams part of the game.
Yeah, and that's a great point. The special teams value does come into play here for sure. And look, there are other metrics in which teams can gauge speed in today's technological world, right? We talk a lot about GPS, right? The tracking software that allows teams, and they get all this, most of this stuff anyway from schools that use those GPS stuff during practice. See how fast you're averaging, how fast you run in practice, how fast you're running in a game, which again, paints it maybe a little bit more of a clear picture in terms of like, all right, how are you using that 4.3 speed in a game scenario? And I think you hit the nail on the head. And one of those prospects, as we kind of transition into prospects to watch, like one of those things that one of those guys I'm really curious to see run is Will Johnson from Michigan, who I think could firmly be in
Hmm.
that top 10 conversation here and is the top corner in this class. And look, this is a guy with great pedigree, great expectation at Michigan, right? Wearing the Charles Woodson number 2. Again, former Raider
Hmm.
right there, right? A guy,
Yeah.
who wanted that spotlight, right? He wanted that those comparisons, and he wanted to live up to. I thought in 23 the tape was really dang good. He missed some time this year, and I don't know if the tape matched up as much in 2024. But I think for him, if he's able to get out there and run, a fast time, kind of reintroducing the athleticism maybe to the world after not getting a chance to showcase it as much, that feels like a scenario and a player that could benefit from an opportunity to run the 40 in Indy.
Yeah, this is an opportunity for him to remind people who he is in terms of the type of
Yeah,
player that he is. It is very similar to me to the situation with Derek Stingley, who played at LSU, went to Houston as a top pick, goes and
great one.
becomes a Pro Bowl player. Where, look, the drop off from his freshman year to his sophomore and junior year was significant, but the player was still the same. For Will Johnson, it's an opportunity to issue a reminder to all of the scouts and coaches that I'm still the guy that everyone came to see a couple years ago. Had a
Right.
subpar final season, but the skills are there. I'm still that guy, and he still is going to have an opportunity to put himself at the top of the board in the DB class, depending upon where you classify Travis Hunter. He's talented,
That's
he's
right.
skilled, he has speed, he has a high football IQ, and I'm gonna say the versatility that he potentially has as a corner will serve him well. He also will benefit from the fact that Mikey Sanderstrill went to Washington
Yes.
and dominated right away. Same system, same program, developed the same way. There are a lot of people that will look at that success and say, yeah, I understand what we saw last year from Will Johnson wasn't his best. But if you look at the body of work, he's worthy of being a guy that is selected in the top 10.
Great point. Great point there too. So then there's a ton of guys like that I think will be really, I'll be really curious to see their times. Denzel Burke from Ohio State, Judea Barron from Texas. Is he a nickel? Is he a corner?
Hmm.
We start thinking about some of those things when we see these guys run. We see them operate in some of these drills, especially those DBs. Man, some of those drills, you kind of get a picture of what these guys do end up looking like. So okay, another couple of guys that I'm curious to see in terms of speed, in terms of athleticism that they show at the combine. Emeka Ibuka and Matthew Golden, two of the top wide receivers in this class. Again, guys, I
Hmm.
feel like could be on the Raiders' radar. Probably not at number 6, but if there is some jockeying up and down the draft board in round 1, because I do feel like those guys are round 1 type of guys. If those guys are running 4.3s, kind of similar to the way Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson did that year at the combine, Golden and Ibuka are true Ibuka especially is a pros pro, man. I think that'll be really fun to watch. And then like who that fastest defensive play, Jalen Walker from Georgia. Does he go out there and blaze a super fast time? And then some of the big guys that run fast times. If you got any of those names, I think those guys are always kind of curious. Really intriguing for me to see.
Yeah, no, like, look, I think this is a class where when you look at the guys that are dotting the top fives at all your position lists, there are going to be some intriguing names. I'll start first with like Michigan's Mason Graham, and the reason why Mason Graham is intriguing is because he's going to be right at that spot. Not saying that the Raiders need one, but if you just talk about like adding dominant players, blue chip players that are worthy of being there, Mason Graham from Michigan is worthy of being in that conversation. If you talk about the guys that are on the outside that could fly and come off the ball, look, it's going to be Mikael Williams from Georgia is interesting when you think about what he
Yes.
brings. Jalen Walker from Georgia is also interesting as a player coming off the edge. All of those guys really fascinate me when it comes to the bigger guys that can run and move and do some different things. And then I'm gonna say like just kind of keep an eye on this guy because when you go back and you think, and you're gonna have to help me with the name. No, you won't have to help me because I'm not gonna use Princely. Princely from Ole Miss.
Uman
You
Mielen.
man, meaning,
Yeah.
meaning, meaning. Yes,
Uman
he's
Mielen. Yeah, I
interesting.
got you.
Yeah, and then Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M. When you
Yes.
think about the top of the
Yes.
second round, like guys that could be available that could enhance what they want to do. If you think about Pete Carroll and what they like to do, what he's traditionally liked to do, look, it's interesting. And I know Patrick Graham
Yeah.
stays on as a defense coordinator, but Pete Carroll loves athletes with great instincts. Those guys that we mentioned not only have great athleticism, but they're very instinctive players, which is why they can tickle the Raiders' fancy.
Yeah, last two names I'll give you as fun ones to watch. Again, from the DB class, Maxwell Hairston from Kentucky had some incredible
Mm,
tape in 23. I think he had six picks in 23. Forget the number exactly. Had an excellent Senior Bowl week. He puts up fast numbers. Again, he's going to be way up there in the conversation. And then another guy that's further down the line as a running back is my guy Marcus Yarns from Delaware, the other winged helmet. Watch
mhm.
this dude at the Senior Bowl was excellent, shot out of a cannon and really good catching the ball out of the backfield. If he runs fast, he's over 22 on the GPS, which generally translates into that 4.3, 40-yard dash range.
Mhm.
That could be top of the class in those kind of times. So I always love seeing those guys who jump up there and run that fast time and maybe make some people go, whoa, hold on. Delaware's got somebody, huh? Yeah. I get into some of that. Okay. Let's transition a little bit here because using the combine as the transition piece, there is not only an opportunity for us to talk to our friends in the NFL, but for
Mhm.
colleagues in the NFL team to team to get a chance to talk. This is where, quite
Mhm.
famously, the trade for the Rams to go up to number one to select Jared Goff was originated, right? It just so happened that the Rams suite was right next to the Titans suite right there, and they kind of got that
Mhm.
conversation going and ended up striking that deal. And, those kinds of things happen. And so, look, this is also a lighter quarterback class in terms of first round value prospects. So, again, like last year, very real possibility that the Raiders get shut out at quarterback by the time number six
Mhm.
rolls around in terms of guys that they would view as a first round value in that spot. So, in your opinion, Bucky, what goes into the anatomy of a trade, especially for a quarterback and especially when you're talking about first round resources?
Yeah, when you beginning to break down the quarterback situation, and you're the Raiders, and you're looking at what you have on your team, Garner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell, you're looking at what could be available in the draft. We talked about those top two guys, Shadur Sanders and Cam Ward, potentially being off the board by the time you get there. Do you have enough love for the others that could be available? Not necessarily in the first round, but in the second round. So your Jackson Darsh, your Will Howard, your Callow O'Connell, your Jalen Milrose, whoever you
Yeah.
decide that you like in those spots, and then you weigh it against the veterans that are available. So now we're getting word about Aaron Rodgers. You're hearing whispers and stuff about
Sam
Matthew
Darnold.
Stafford being available. Sam Darnold could be available as a free agent. You now have to kind of get in there. And the thing about this quarterback market is it literally is a game of musical chairs where you don't want to get left out. And that could kind of lead you to look offer up some things to make
Yeah.
sure that you get a quarterback that you want. For the Raiders, the thing that you would like to do is you would like to secure the short term and the long term at the same time. You would like to be able to have a quarterback if you jump in and get a veteran quarterback like we talk about Stafford or Rodgers or even Russell Wilson to a degree that can handle it for 1 year, maybe 2 years. But at some point, you got to get the long term solution at the position. And whether that's the
Right.
draft, whether that is getting him free agent market or whatever, it's the number one position in football. It's hard to win a championship without an elite one in tow. At some point, you got to keep throwing stuff against the wall until you get one that sticks. But yeah, you have to begin to put the framework together to make a trade to get one of the desired quarterbacks that allow you to kind of
Yeah.
navigate this short term situation with Pete Carroll in place.
Sure. And look, there's plenty of talk, right, about prospects, beyond Shador Sanders and Cam Ward, who are, fairly unanimously viewed as the top two in this quarterback class. But, there's talk like, all right, does Jackson Dart become the next guy? Does, the lack of depth at the very top of the class push guys up, or does it make teams maybe less likely or more likely to trade up, right, to try to get one that they do believe has that, since there are fewer that have that first round type of cachet to it. So I think about that a lot. I think about connections. You mentioned Will Howard, obviously played
Hmm.
and developed into a really good collegiate quarterback this year for Chip Kelly at Ohio State. Does that become appealing to Pete Carroll and John Spytek, knowing like, hey, Chip Kelly knows exactly what to do to get the most out of Will Howard? He's seen it. That I think that is always something that's interesting here. Does that get overplayed in your opinion at all, Bucky? Like the connections in terms of background?
I don't think it's overplayed. I think every connection matters. Whether you pull the trigger on the person, that's another thing because now you're
Right,
looking at college game is so much different than a pro game, but you certainly understand the background. I would say don't underestimate Chip Kelly's knowledge from recruiting
right.
these players because most
Yeah.
of the players that are top players coming out, he had to at least have a conversation about them, yay or nay. Do we want to recruit them? What do we know about them, etc. That gives him an inside track on trying to make a good decision on which quarterback should be the Raiders quarterback of the future. I believe in those connections. And I would say this um, Dylan Gabriel, who is someone that falls all over the board when you talk to
Yes.
evaluators, he could be another one that is of interest. Chip Kelly's connections going all the way back to Oregon. You know, he has some intel on him. I just think it's fascinating that he is going to have an opportunity to really deliver some great information to the front office to be able to make a good decision at quarterback.
Great points on that, and I do love Dylan Gabriel. Again, this is a Kyler Murray type size in terms of height, although a little narrower. And kind of same goes with Russell Wilson, all in that kind of 5'10" range there. But Dylan is a gamer, and love what he is able to do and what he did throughout his entire career, both at UCF, at OU, and also at Oregon. Okay, talking about connections, though, I do think we can have a little bit of fun here with one of the newest Las Vegas Raiders, Kyle Phillips. And we got to go all kinds of 6 degrees of separation here with this one because this brings us back to our origin story with the Raiders NFL Draft Podcast. We
Mm-hmm.
began shooting this podcast when we were doing the East West Shrine Bowl in Las Vegas some 4 years ago when Kyle Phillips was the talk of the town at East West Shrine Bowl practices. He was unguardable. He was the best in show, all that after spending 4 years at UCLA, Bucky, with Chip Kelly. And now he's back with Chip. He's in silver and black. He's ready to rock and roll. And I hope that this is something that can unlock some of that potential and production that we saw against some really good competition at the Shrine Bowl here for Kyle Phillips.
I hope so. He was so good. Going back to that week of
Yeah.
all star practices and watching him go to work and winning his one on ones and playing well consistently, and then being able to put together some things that you could see punt return game, slot game, being able to do some of those things.
Yes.
And really, in this league, Rhett, you can talk about so many different players that play in it, but it takes one advocate for you to have an opportunity to really do it on a major level. So hopefully, Kyle Phillips has that in Chip Kelly.
Yeah, and then look, I mean, I'm sure considering his size, considering his skill set, probably has a fan in Tom Brady as well with the Raiders organization. Going back to his time with Julian Edelman and Danny Amendola and Wes Welker and that whole crew. And Phillips feels like a guy who, again, told me that week that those are some of the guys that he really tried to, kind of emulate his game after, watched and tried to perfect and try to work on his craft in that image. So I think that's all kind of cool symmetry and a good way for us to close the book on this episode of the Raiders NFL Draft Podcast. We sure do appreciate you guys for being with us. We appreciate the heck out of our friends at Silver and Black Productions for making this thing sing each and every week. For Bucky Brooks, I am Rhett Lewis. Thanks again for being with us. We'll be back with you live from Indianapolis next week with another look at the Raiders draft plans right here on the Raiders NFL Draft Podcast.